The Argueta inquest produces a list of recommendations. Thunder Bay Regional looking to move some patients. And Quebec Falls in line for a major facelift. Good evening and thank you for joining us. The inquest jury examining the death of a young Thunder Bay construction worker has released 9 recommendations aimed at preventing similar tragedies in the future. 24-year-old Gustavo Argueta died 2 years ago while working on the Mackenzie River Bridge. The inquest was expected to last all week, but it concluded last night with all parties saying they're satisfied with the results. Jonathan Wilson reports.
You know, there isn't a day that I don't think about the accident. There isn't a day that I don't miss my brother.
An emotional Walter Argueta testified on the third and final day of the inquest into the death of his brother. Gustavo Argueta was 50 feet up on a bucket lift on a steep slope under the Mackenzie River Bridge when it tipped over. Walter says his brother told him the training involved to operate the bucket lift was inadequate and the topics covered in daily safety meetings were irrelevant. And the jury heard that loud and clear. Among the 9 recommendations, 5 of them deal with better training for young workers using elevated work platforms.
I think that there was a general consensus that if training had been better for this young man, had he known and appreciated the risks that were associated with the job that he was doing, that in fact he would not have put himself in that situation of danger, or had he found himself suddenly in that situation of danger, he would have been able to better extricate himself.
Members of the Argueta family say they were originally reluctant to take part in this inquest and relive the tragedy. But after 3 days here, they say the process was worth it.
I do believe that some of the changes that are that they're recommending will impact the industry in a better way.
The jury also recommends stronger penalties for altering or disarming safety mechanisms on equipment. Argueta's machine had an alarm which warns the driver about being on an unsafe slope, but that alarm had spray foam in it and the wires had been disconnected. The jury also wants the construction industry to hold toolbox meetings at the start of each workday to discuss workplace objectives and address safety concerns.
The reason why I decided to come was maybe with my insight or me being present would help make some different changes. So no other family has to deal with this, what we went through, and no other young worker will lose his life at such a young age.
He shouldn't have died, and quite frankly, this inquest today has, I think, produced some very important recommendations that are going to prevent these tragedies in the future.
Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
The Thunder Bay Regional Hospital is once again in a gridlock situation when it comes to the space they have available for patients who are admitted. The hospital is over capacity by 60 to 70 patients every day, and that has forced officials to look for additional space in another location. Dr. Mark Henderson is the Executive Vice President of Patient Services. He says they're anticipating a very difficult year ahead. Usually in the summer, they don't experience an overload of patients, but this year that is not the case. Henderson explains that ever since the interim long-term care facility closed its doors last October, the hospital experienced an influx of patients. They're now looking at taking over one of the floors at McKellar Place. Henderson says they are in talks with Habib Enterprises, and while it's in the very early stages, they are expected to hear more information from the local health integration network next week.
Nurses, more physiotherapists, more occupational therapists, things like that. The existing cadre of doctors we have, we think, could look after these patients. I mean, they're already looking after them now, right? But in alcoves and sunrooms and places like that.
As mentioned, the expansion plans are in the early stages, but hospital staff are hoping that by next week they will have an answer on whether the expansion is feasible. Voters in 5 Ontario ridings have until 9 o'clock tonight to cast ballots in by-elections that are seen as a test of Kathleen Wynne's 6 months as Premier. Observers will be looking to see if voters hold Wynne responsible for issues such as the gas plant scandal that happened under her predecessor Dalton McGuinty. Analysts say PC leader Tim Hudak must take at least one of the 5 ridings to hold off challenges to his leadership. The New Democrats are widely expected to take a Windsor riding. Wynne's Liberals will still lead a minority government regardless of the outcomes of the by-elections. A motorcycle and a car collided today in front of Grandview Mall, right around the lunch hour. Ambulance and fire crews were called to the scene. The man driving the motorcycle was taken into the ambulance, but was released soon after with some minor scratches. The driver of the car was not injured. An investigation into the incident is ongoing, and there is no word on whether any charges will be laid. Meanwhile, Thunder Bay police have now laid charges following a two-vehicle collision at the corner of Algoma and Covette Streets yesterday. A pickup truck and car collided during the lunch hour, resulting in the car being pushed over a sidewalk and into a yard. Police say the driver of the car, a 48-year-old woman, has been charged with a stop sign violation. In other news, Thunder Bay fire investigators say they'll likely never know the cause of a major house fire in Westfort. The blaze broke out Tuesday evening on Home Avenue. Fire investigator Eric Nordlin says they've been able to pinpoint the origin of the fire in the attic area, but the exact cause will have to remain undetermined. He adds there is nothing suspicious about the fire. No one was hurt in the blaze, but total damages are estimated at about $100,000. Communities along Highway 11 west of Fort Frances received some welcome news this week in the form of a $25 million investment by Hydro One. All the required approvals have been obtained, and construction on a new transformer station in the town of Barwick is set to begin. The station will improve the delivery of local electricity and provide more capacity for communities from Rainy River to Fort Frances. Reeve of Chapel Township, Peter Van Heist, says reliability issues have been a concern in the area due to the distance that feeder lines are currently required to travel.
We have had some problem with blackouts, especially in the west end of the district, and this power station being in the middle of the district between Fort Frances and Rainy River will give a stable power supply.
Construction is slated to begin in the coming weeks with plans for completion in August of 2014. A popular tourist destination is getting a major facelift, and the MNR wants to hear from the public on the upcoming project. Quebec Falls Provincial Park will receive numerous upgrades, which are to begin in the fall. The project involves the demolition of the existing park office and gatehouse buildings and the construction of a new entrance control office. There are also plans to upgrade the septic services and widen the entry road into the park. The entrance to the main parking lot will be moved, and the surrounding area will be finished and restored. The public is being invited to provide their input during a 30-day comment period ending August 31st. Drivers from the Northwood area are once again dealing with long waits and traffic jams along William Street. It's due to the ongoing construction at Golf Links and the Harbour Expressway. The latest closure of the turning lanes is forcing hundreds of drivers to use William Street and Balmoral to access other parts of town. Nate Jones spoke to some of those frustrated drivers today to see how they're coping.
Crazy. Hasn't been too bad today.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Crazy, not too bad, or terrible. Whatever you want to call it, the Golf Links Junot Corridor project is moving along. But for some people, it's not moving fast enough.
Construction needs to end. It's quite congested. It's very difficult to make a turn.
Other people have suggestions on how to capitalize on the high traffic and long wait times.
You should be selling burgers and hot dogs along here. You make a fortune.
It might be a little late for this reporter to start a fast food career on the side of the road, as the closure will be short-lived. Late next week, the intersection will open again after it's been repaved. Most of the drivers agreed that this project is necessary for the city, and some even have a few suggestions.
I think they could be a little more organized when they do a job, like do a job and finish it off, not pissing around all over the place. That's what I find. We know it has to be done, but sometimes they'll take and start one and then go somewhere else.
Projects like these create jobs and eventually give the city a better route for motorists to use. It seems it's all how you look at it.
Not horrible, but, just got to be patient.
This part of the project will wrap up at the end of next week, and it is said to be the last disruption to the expressway. Phase 1 is expected to be completed in November. Nate Jones, TBT News.
Well, it looks like Trans-Canada Highway drivers between Nipigon and Thunder Bay will have to make sure they've got enough fuel in their tanks for the trip. As of last week, the 110-kilometer stretch of highway no longer has any gas bars directly along the route. Just 2 years ago, the highway had 4 gas stations between Thunder Bay and Nipigon, but 2 of those businesses were purchased by the province and demolished to make way for the new 4-lane highway. Pass Lake Corner service was removed in late 2011, and the Canyon Country service station in Dorian was taken down soon afterward. Meanwhile, Crystal Beach Variety is no longer located along the highway. Instead, it's about half a kilometer south of the new 4-lane section, which opened last week. And the Pass Lake truck stop was supposed to reopen in late 2012 following some major renovations, but it remains shut, and officials with the Ministry of Transportation say they do not know when or if it plans to reopen. Any new developments along the 4-lane highway are subject to MTO land use and entrance permits. The ministry says there are many crossroads along the highway where a gas bar could be set up, but as of right now, no such projects have been announced. Well, despite the wettest July in over 15 years, the Summer in the Parks concert series continues to be a hot spot on Wednesday nights. Organizers say they've lost only 1 show because of rain, and another had to be shortened. But people continue to show up and enjoy themselves no matter what the weather. Matt Scooby has more.
Armed with their lawn chairs and umbrellas, another huge crowd turned up at Marina Park on Wednesday night for Summer in the Parks. Festivals and events coordinator for the city, John Paul DeRover, has been organizing the concert series for the past 4 years. Even with the lousy weather, he says people have continued to show up in droves.
The event keeps growing. It's something that we've noticed over the past few years. We keep saying, oh, 2,000 people a night, 3,000 people a night. Now it's 4,000 people a night. The event's been growing, and even on nights when there is poor weather, you still have a lot of people showing up at Marina Park, ready with their umbrellas. It's great.
On top of the music, the event features children's activities, concessions, and a community group area. Everyone who attends usually finds something to enjoy.
We're here with the camp, and we got told to come here, and it was a wonderful surprise. We didn't even know we were coming, and kids have had a blast. We've been enjoying the music, dancing, started with Zumba. Everyone's getting their faces painted. It's wonderful.
I got my face painted, and it's great.
People, music, everything. It's nice to go. It's nice to be here.
Well, we always find the music pretty good. I like blues and that. It's nice around here. They got the food and everything else, and it's good.
The beautiful view of Lake Superior, the Sleeping Giant. We get an amazing place. It's an amazing opportunity for people to get out and mingle and meet their friends. So that's what I'm here for.
On top of all of the activities, DeRover says the local artisans market has exploded.
In the past, we've had 4, 5, 6 artisans. Now we're actually turning them away every week because we've got over 12 to 14 that we have consistently on a weekly basis.
There are 2 more Summer in the Park nights remaining on August 7th and 14th, and DeRover is holding out hope that the weather will cooperate.
It's August, so fingers crossed that we have no more rain. I'm sure we'll be fine.
Matt Scooby, TBT News.
The 23rd annual Festa Italiana is set to go this weekend. The popular event showcases Italian music, dance, and food. Festivities include traditional, musical, and stage presentations, a fashion show, fireworks, and of course, homemade Italian food. Festa Chair Benny Melchiore says visitors can get a taste of Italy without leaving our city.
We have different dishes from different parts of Italy, different region. See, we have to understand when we talk about Italian culture, we're not talking about one culture. Italy, it's made of 21 regions, and we all have a different culture and different traditional and specialty dishes from each part of those regions. So it's nice you can travel all Italy without leaving Thunder Bay.
The event runs Sunday and Monday, and patrons are encouraged to bring lawn chairs. A draw for a trip for 2 to Italy will be held Monday night at 10 o'clock.
Well, turning to weather, earlier in the news hour, we heard about Summer in the Parks, Festa Italiana, and we had thunder in the air. And with the Canadian Senior Little League Championships continuing tonight at Baseball Central, is that going to impact the scheduled game tonight?
Well, there is a slight possibility. That's because it's been very uneven across the region. If we take a look at what happened, you can see little areas of showers popping up throughout the region. It is clearing out in some cases, but you can see there's potential for more very short-lived pop-up showers and even a slight risk of a thunderstorm. But despite all of that, we did hit a high of 21. The Humidex topped out at about 26 for about 5 minutes during that thunderstorm. The rest of the time, It wasn't too humid in the region with the winds from the north-northwest. But at this hour, we've got kind of a mixed bag. So we've had some clouds roll into Red Lake, temperatures at about 16. Then we hit the low 20s for Sioux Lookout, Dryden, Fort Frances, Upsala, and yes, Thunder Bay at this hour, we're at 20 Celsius. We've got mainly cloudy conditions, a few sunny breaks in Greenstone and towards Sault Ste. Marie. Partly cloudy skies. Definitely a cool day on the lake for Marathon at this hour. Tonight, Thunder Bay will stay in the double digits, but drop down to a low of 11 Celsius. And there are those partly cloudy skies with a passing shower. So short-lived, quick drop, and then heading off. So hopefully if we can hold it off for a few hours to get the evening's events done, I think we're doing okay. Winds from the west-northwest, 9 to 22 kilometers per hour. And as we head into Friday, we continue to be in this pocket of what AccuWeather is referring to as unseasonably cool. Now, unseasonably cool does not mean 14 Celsius like we saw last weekend. But at this time of year, we should be in the mid-20s. Each day we seem to be hovering closer to the low 20s. That's where we're going to stay for Friday and as we head into Saturday as well. So it doesn't necessarily bode well for the long weekend, but so far it's looking fairly dry, and it's going to be in the low end of our seasonal values for the 3 days off that most of us have. So not bad start for August.
Not bad. Thanks, Fiona. Well, the 18-year-old who was shot and killed by police over the weekend had his funeral held today. We have that story for you coming up next.
Sammy never hurt anyone.
A funeral was held today for Sammy Yatim, the teenager shot and killed on a Toronto streetcar by a police officer. Ron Charles reports.
Mourners came to say goodbye to Sammy Yatim, but they're still bothered by so many questions about why the teenager's life was cut short by a police officer's bullets.
There's a lot of question and answered, obviously, but we know one thing. Sammy was taken away from us. Sammy never hurt anyone. For now, they're setting aside their outrage at how Yatim was killed in order to grieve.
It was horrible. Nobody should ever go through such a thing, ever. Especially with such a sweet young boy who died at such a young age with this horrible tragedy.
He's the kind of guy who would respect those who respected him. So he didn't really start anything with anybody. He didn't mess with people who didn't mess with him. He was a really nice guy.
Someone standing on the outside looking in, they would see that, oh, he's a troubled kid, he's a this, he's a that, thug. No, not that at all. Not even close.
The family allowed a friend to record the eulogy delivered by Yatim's sister, Sarah.
Sammy was and still is my hero. And maybe I'm gonna miss him being here physically, but he is here.
For Willie Riodica, attending Yatim's funeral was particularly difficult. His son Jeffrey was shot and killed by police 9 years ago while officers were restraining him, saying he had a knife.
My son was shot 4 times. Now it's 9 times. Probably another occurrence could be 20 or 50 times. What are they doing? Our youth is our future, and then they're killing our youth.
Mourners walked the hearse carrying Sammy Yatim's coffin right to the street to say their final farewell. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
Chilling details came out today at the sentencing of Ariel Castro, the Cleveland kidnapper and rapist who kept 3 young women locked up and terrorized for years. Keith Bogue has the story and a caution some of the evidence is disturbing.
Ariel Castro sat handcuffed, shackled, and listening as witnesses testified for nearly 3 hours about the crimes he'd committed and the harm he'd done to the 3 women he'd held captive for so many years. It began with the police, who described the day they rescued the women in Castro's house.
She literally launched herself into Officer Espada's arms. He legs, arms, just choking him, and she just kept repeating, "You saved us, you saved us."
Then the emergency room doctor who first treated the women after their rescue.
All 3 of them did relate to us that they had been sexually assaulted. All 3 of them related to us that they had been held prisoner in this house for several years against their will.
Investigators testified about what the women had told them. Michelle Knight, the first kidnapped.
She had been pregnant on several occasions in the house. Ariel Castro terminated her pregnancies. This was done by starving her, feeding her rotten food, kicking and punching her in the stomach.
They showed photographs of the squalid conditions of the Castro house and the heavy chains and locks used to restrain them. Michelle Knight was the only victim who was in the courtroom, and Castro seemed to try to catch her eye. She spoke to the court, and she spoke directly to Castro.
Now your hill is just beginning. I will live on. You will die a little every day.
Castro also spoke to the court and presented himself as a victim.
I'm not a monster. I'm a normal person. I am just sick. I have an addiction.
He said many things that were plainly outrageous.
Most of the sex that went on in the house, and probably all of it, was consensual.
He did apologize to the victims and their families.
I am truly sorry to...
But he also said he was a victim too, that he'd been sexually abused as a child. The judge thanked Michelle Knight for her restraint while listening to Castro. And then he added up the guilty pleas and their sentences and sent Castro to prison for the rest of his life. Keith Bogue, CBC News, Washington.
The man at the center of the NSA surveillance leak may have a new home. Edward Snowden finally stepped on Russian soil today. He's been stuck in the transit zone of Moscow's airport for the last month. Russia has granted Snowden temporarily asylum on the condition that he stops leaking U.S. secrets. Snowden's lawyers say he accepts the terms. Meanwhile, the U.S. wants Snowden sent back home to face espionage charges. A Calgary-based company is ready to spend billions of dollars to get crude oil from Western Canada to the East Coast. TransCanada Corporation's plan includes converting existing pipelines that now carry natural gas and building about 1,400 kilometers of new pipeline. Aaron Saltzman has more on today's announcement.
It's a multi-billion-dollar project the company behind it calls historic, evocative even of the fabled last spike.
Canada has a long tradition of forging important nation-building east-west ties across this country, like the Canadian Pacific Railway.
Like the CPR, the Energy East pipeline would cost a fortune and generate its share of controversy. The $12 billion project would run from Hardisty, Alberta to St. John, New Brunswick, carrying 1.1 million barrels of crude oil per day from the oil sands to a new deep-water marine terminal to be built by Irving Oil.
The largest ships in the world will dock at our new marine terminal and will export Canadian oil to markets in the U.S., Europe, India, and elsewhere.
Irving and TransCanada say Energy East will create thousands of jobs, boost the Canadian economy, and reduce our dependence on the U.S. market. 97% of Canadian energy exports are sent south of the border. Getting crude to the Atlantic coast would make it easier for it to be shipped to Asia.
When we move from 1.5 to 2 million barrels per day to 5 million barrels per day, we're going to need to have access to markets from different points.
Two other proposed pipelines, Keystone XL and Northern Gateway, which would help get Canadian oil to the U.S. and Asia respectively, have both faced opposition, and Energy East is raising similar concerns. TransCanada says Energy East would reduce the need to ship oil by rail, no small consideration after the cataclysm in Lac Mégantic. The project still needs government and regulatory approval. TransCanada hopes to complete construction by 2018. Aaron Saltzman, CBC News, Toronto.
The Sea King helicopters used by the military are marking an anniversary that many people didn't expect to be reached. 50 years after the first of the helicopters were delivered, they're still in use. Tom Murphy has the story.
They made it. The Sea Kings, 50 years old and still flying high.
And it's very important to recognize the last 50 years of the machine and the last 50 years of the community.
In its heyday, the Sea King was a real innovation, a helicopter that could land on the deck of a ship. Canadians perfected that maneuver.
We did stuff with this you weren't supposed to be able to do, and we're still doing that with it.
It has helped save countless lives and has flown untold missions, including during the Cold War. Russian submarines could outpace warships, but a Canadian destroyer with a helicopter on board had the edge.
So you needed helicopters, the ships needed to stay away from where the submarines were, and you sent aircraft. That's how you did it.
But with the passage of time, the Sea King fell behind technologically and required increased maintenance. It became synonymous, some say unfairly, with forced landings and crashes. The most recent, just a couple of weeks ago. 10 Canadian Sea King crew have been lost over the years. They were remembered today. Relief for the Sea King was supposed to be on its way in the 1980s. The Mulroney Tories ordered replacements. The Chrétien Liberals later scrapped that deal. Then in 2005, the Martin Liberals ordered Cyclone helicopters, and they still aren't in service.
It takes too long. People's lives are put at risk, and yeah, there's some embarrassment that goes with that. Until the government comes up with a different procurement system, this will repeat itself over and over and over again.
So on this day, the question is, how many more birthdays will the venerable Sea King celebrate? Tom Murphy, CBC News, Halifax.
Let's take a look at today's market numbers. In Toronto, the TSX jumped 107 points to 12,593. The Dow Jones soared 128 points to 15,628. The Nasdaq was up nearly 50 points to 36.75. The Canadian dollar down 7/10 to close at 96.64 cents US. Gold slipped $1.80 to $1,300 an ounce, and crude rose $2.86 to $107 per barrel. All right, well, it was a good start for Thunder Bay at the Senior Little League Championships.
Yeah, you don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball off the hop, and the locals definitely didn't do that. They look really impressive, and they'll have a chance to beat a winless team tonight, so pretty good opportunity to go 2-0. Day 2 of the Canadian Senior Little League Championships is underway at Baseball Central. Cape Breton won its opener this afternoon 10-0. They needed only 5 innings to hand Valleyfield Quebec their first loss. Now underway, the Thunder Bay Selects will try for their second straight win against 0-1 Fraser Valley from BC. Last night, the locals looked great in their first game against Lethbridge, Alberta. Mike Albanese has your highlights.
The 2013 Senior Little League Canadian Championships kicked off today, and the hosting Thunder Bay Selects took on the Prairie Division champs, the Lethbridge Giants. The winner of this championship containing 15 and 16-year-olds goes on to play in the Senior Little League World Series. Bottom of the first with Tyler Kitsing on third, DJ DiPiero blasts one, allowing Kitsing to score the first points of the game. Next batter up, Tyler Minoletti grounds a ball up right, which buys enough time for pitcher Bryson Aub to score. Bottom of the second, now 2-0 Selects after Max Ridholm steals second and then moves to third. Brennan Tianhara drives him home, bringing the score to 3-0 Selects. 2 plays later, Tianhara himself and Aub get home from DiPiero's pop fly. Bottom of the fourth, now Thunder Bay not slowing down as Aub gets himself all the way to third on his own to be brought home by Tommy Biley the next play. A few plays later, Dan Del Paggio bunts one, loading the bases successfully for Brandon Gillies to bring home Biley and bringing Tyler Minoletti to third and Del Paggio to second. Next play, Ridholm gets himself out, but drew enough time off to allow Minoletti and Del Paggio to score, ending the inning 10-0 Thunder Bay. Top of the fifth, the Giants finally have an answer for the Selects as Jesse Werfel gets home from Logan Ramsdale's line drive out left. Next batter up, Noah Postman lines one out right, now bringing home Dane Conway and Ramsdale to make the score 10-3 Thunder Bay. The Giants couldn't find any more answers for the Selects though, as both teams put up one more run each, ending the game 11-4. Selects coach Mike McAllister had this to say about the performance of his team.
A great feeling. Heading in, obviously the first game is the most important game, and we did what we had to do today, and we're very proud of the boys.
Mike Albanese, TBT Sports.
Well, the Border Cats send their ace Chris Kerwood to the mound tonight in Wisconsin as they try and salvage a split with Eau Claire. The Express took the series opener 5-2 last night, dropping the Cats' second-half record to 6-18. The B-Cats' runs would come on a wild pitch and a Kyle Hahn sac fly. The Blue Jays open a 4-game series in Anaheim tonight with the LA Angels, and Thunder Bay Chill head coach Tony Calistro is a finalist for Coach of the Year in the PDL. The award winners will be announced Saturday night in Austin, Texas. In Kansas City last night, the Major League Soccer All-Stars took on AS Roma. The Italian side will strike early. It's 1-0 Roma, only 4 minutes in. Off to the 47th minute, Federico Bolzaretti supplies the nice cross. Alessandro Fiorezzi will tap it in. Shortly after they made it 3-0, MLS does avoid the shutout as Omar Gonzalez with a brilliant header on the free kick, but it would not prove to be enough because AS Roma from Italy would win it 3-1. The Montreal Alouettes have fired head coach Dan Hawkins. GM Jim Popp will take over. The Owls have a 2-3 record. Winnipeg is benching Buck Pierce, Holly. They're making Justin Goltz their new starting quarterback for the rest of the season. All he says about time. Bombers head coach Tim Burke is under fire over comments he made on his weekly radio show. Burke says he thinks the team should hire a consultant to assess the team's coaches to find out what they're doing wrong. The Bombers take a 1-4 record into BC Monday night.
Now, don't blow this out of proportion because it's not,
That is easier said than done, especially when fans are looking to Burke for answers to the struggles of the Bombers and then hear him suggest they may seek outside help from a consultant to examine what he and his coaches are doing.
What that means is somebody to look at our defense, somebody to look at our offense. Just, tell us what you're seeing, what do you think an opponent's thinking when they look at us?
And Burke pointed out this isn't a new idea.
In the NFL, they do it all the time.
A defensive coach, Burke plans to get more involved with that side of the football when the players return to practice Thursday, especially with the secondary unit that has been shredded the last 3 weeks. And he's losing his patience as the errors are being made by veteran players.
Well, if it was a young guy making a mistake, you'd probably be patient, but if it's a veteran making a mistake, you know, and they've been through this, you can't let it go. I don't want to get into why it's going wrong, but because I don't know why it's going wrong, and I'll ask them why, but we're just not going to stand for it.
Burke added that defensive back Jovan Johnson is doubtful for Monday's game against the BC Lions because of a hamstring injury. And who starts at quarterback between Justin Goltz and Buck Pierce is also a question mark.
Well, we don't know. He's listed as questionable this week. He's got an ankle. Buck's still listed as injured. So, heck, you might see Max Hall this week.
Staple of the August long weekend is the Strathcona Invitational. Senior and Super Senior qualifying goes Friday. Play will tee off on Saturday. It all wraps up on Monday. Robert Cumming is the defending champ. And now we'll introduce you to Peter McLeod, Canada's best airplane racer who travels across the country putting on quite the show.
Every time Pete McLeod straps into his aerobatic aircraft, it's just another day at the office. There are loops, spins, and other gravity and death-defying moves. While his airplane may run on oil and gas, his body runs on another type of fuel. How many of those Red Bulls do you have to kick back before a show?
I've usually got some running through me before a show. It's a workout up there, so a little boost helps for sure.
And it's vital he gets that boost when he's above English Bay on Wednesday night. The toll on the body, mentally and physically, will be enormous. Let's just say it'd be the equivalent of an intense boot camp workout.
10 minutes in the air is 3 hours in the gym for sure.
Physically and mentally?
Yeah, both, yeah, for sure. The focus required as well as the physical aspect to keep that endurance up and keep the airplane moving. I like to fly in a high energy show and keep things going constantly without too many breaks. And yeah, you've definitely got to have some endurance for that.
McLeod was born to fly. His first flight when he was just 6 weeks old in the family plane. He received his pilot's license before earning his driver's license at the age of 16. In 2009, he started racing on the Red Bull circuit, becoming the youngest and first Canadian to do so.
For me, it was, I didn't realize until I got a little older that not every kid kind of gets in the plane and flies with his dad or his family, and just like riding in the family car. So for me, it's where I'm most happy.
The Red Bull Air Race World Championship is taking a break, but should return in 2014. Until then, McLeod will continue to perform at air shows, mesmerizing fans right across the country.
The best part of my job is, without a doubt, what you just saw. So I get to do what I love. So you know, there's not a day that I have to show up for work because I love it.
And really, how can you fault him for that?
2 Thunderbolt swimmers brought home medals from the Canadian Age Group Championships in Montreal recently. Caitlin Hay won a silver in the 1500 meters, while Emma Lockyer captured a bronze in the 400-meter individual medley. And the NFL is changing the format for the Pro Bowl. Rosters for next year will be selected in a draft by team captains. Fan voting will determine the players in the draft. The game will be played January 26th in Hawaii. The league had used the AFC versus NFC format since 1971. And Holly and Fiona, that'll do it for sports.
Okay. Well, Holly, I know you're a fan of Big Brother.
Big fan, yeah.
Unfortunately, I've let loose on your dirty little secret.
That's okay.
She's proud of it.
I'm not ashamed of it.
Well, good news. You can get another dose of it tonight. We've got a great lineup with more. Here's your Teletalk.
Tonight on Global Thunder Bay at 8, it's The Winner Is. And it's down to the wire as 6 more acts try for $1 million. Then at 9 on Big Brother, it's time to say goodbye to someone with tonight's live eviction. And at 10 on Rookie Blue, bones discovered in a ravine reopens an old missing persons case. Over on CKPR Thunder Bay at 7:30, visit Britain's craziest neighbors on Coronation Street. At 8, The Nature of Things takes you to the cutting edge of the world's energy and climate solutions. Then at 9, we look at life after the Cold War ended on Love, Hate, and Propaganda, The War on Terror. And at 11:35, George talks with television and radio journalist Carol Off. Teletalk is brought to you by Points, the traffic ticket specialists.
Well, it was a rather wet day here in the city, Fiona, but things are looking dry for the long weekend.
Yeah, things are actually looking pretty good, at least, well, sky-wise. Maybe not the temperatures some would like, but it's going to be at least relatively summer-like. Today, we hit a high of just 21. Normally at this time of year, we see highs of about 25, 26. Well, with the Humidex, it felt pretty close to that for about 5 minutes. But unfortunately, that was with a brief thunderstorm around 4 o'clock this afternoon. Winds were from the north-northwest at about 34 kilometers per hour is what we saw during the storm, but the rest of the time down to low double digits for most of the afternoon. We take a look at what's going on across the country. Vancouver's seeing a touch of cloud right now at 21. There's a risk of some rain over the next couple of days, but Prince George, wow, 30 Celsius and nothing but sun. Edmonton currently at 22. They've seen a touch of cloud move in, and Calgary, well, continuing to be fairly cloudy and a little on the cool side. Southern Saskatchewan, nice and consistent temperatures. We've got matching temperatures at 23 and fairly similar skies. Winnipeg continues to see pretty gusty conditions from the northwest. They're currently at 21. As we head into Toronto, currently at 23 under mainly cloudy skies, a few clear spots, but there are possible thunderstorms for tomorrow. So I have the impression that folks are going to try to enjoy the weather tonight. So we move into Ottawa and Montreal. It says 22. Humidex says 28. So it's a little bit muggy in the region. And if that's not bad enough, Quebec City hit a Humidex of 33 this afternoon, and that's without even any sunshine to add to it. So we head into the Maritimes, very consistent again as well. Lots of sunshine, 25 for Fredericton and Charlottetown. Halifax at 22. Humidex nearing 30 in all locations, including St. John earlier today. They're currently at 21 under partly cloudy skies, and that's with some gusty winds, but all coming from the southwest. So it's been a very nice flow of warmer air. We take a look at what's going on today. We had those pop-up showers, and as we head into tomorrow, we're just on the edge of it. So once again, under a mix of sun and cloud, we could see some rain, and at times it could be heavy if it hits, but it's a very hit or miss scenario for tomorrow. Remember, this is all potential rain. This is not definite shower activity that you're seeing. And as we head into the weekend, for Saturday, well, we have that high pressure center moving in. That does mean a bit of a cooler flow from the northwest, but it also will help dry things out again and give us a fair amount of sunshine for the first half of the weekend. If we take a look at what's going on across the region, don't panic when you see little raindrops there. Remember, that means just about a 40 to 60% chance of showers tonight for most areas, and tomorrow it does drop down to just a slight risk of rain. Temperatures a bit on the cool side across the region tomorrow. Thunder Bay probably one of the slightly warmer spots, if you can call it that. This hour looks like we added an extra degree to our high. In the last 20 minutes, we've topped up to 22 Celsius under partly cloudy conditions. And tonight, a low of 11. There's that risk of a passing shower again, and winds are going to be relatively light. First thing tomorrow, starting off at about 13 Celsius. Hopefully it's as beautiful tomorrow morning as it was today. It was a gorgeous way to start the day. By noon, that's where we get that risk of showers, but we'll still warm up to about 20 at 4 o'clock, but that's with winds from the north-northwest, so it might feel a little bit cooler. We're going to top out with 20 Celsius as our high, and remember, we could be seeing anywhere from 1 to 3 millimeters of rain tomorrow if it does hit. Weekend, partly sunny. That's your first day of the long weekend, 22 by Sunday, 24. Mix of sun and cloud for the holiday Monday at 20, so this is all looking really good for Festa Italia. 21 with a slight risk of a thunderstorm on Tuesday, but all in all, looking pretty nice for the weekend.
Dealing with serious health scares is one reason Canadian doctors are well paid. But are they overpaid? A new report suggests our physicians make about $300,000 a year. As Shirley Angle reports, we all want to keep our doctors happy, but is the price too high?
What are you doing? They're on the front lines of the healthcare debate in Canada. Yet a massive hike in doctors' pay over the last 15 years went largely unscrutinized until the economy fell ill.
for us, it was in the order of 35 to 40% in real terms. In other words, in over and above the effects of inflation.
That's 4.5 times what the average Canadian worker makes.
I wish I was a doctor.
According to a new study, it's due to rising fees and overblown fears of a doctor shortage or brain drain.
You want them happy. They have big responsibilities.
The Canadian Institute for Health Information says the average physician made $307,000 by 2010. It varies by province. Alberta and Ontario pay the highest, Quebec and the Maritimes the lowest.
When it gets to the stage where the sense is that incomes are so high that it is pushing up the cost of overall health care, those organizations bear some responsibility for saying, listen, as a self-regulating profession, it's up to us to ensure that Canadians get adequate health care at a reasonable cost.
The Canadian Medical Association refused our request for an interview on why doctors' pay is justified, as did several provincial associations, which negotiate physicians' contracts with provincial governments every few years.
A spokesperson pointed out the numbers aren't actual take-home pay. Doctors have overhead costs like insurance, equipment, and staffing, never mind med school debts.
I think it's a bit extreme to say they're bankrupting the healthcare system, but
this expert says it's a symptom of a bigger ailment in deficit-strained provinces.
In Alberta and Ontario, doctors accepted basically 0% increases for the next 2 or 3 years. And that's, I think, the pattern that provincial governments are wanting, not only with doctors, but with nurses, with teachers, with university professors, et cetera, et cetera.
It's bound to be a tough pill for doctors to swallow. Shirley Angle, Global News, Ottawa.
Well, a lot of us complain during the summer months of bugs and mosquitoes in particular, but no amount of mosquitoes in our city are going to compare to what we're going to show you after the break. Stay with us. Well, if you're planning a trip to the Arctic, you may want to pack some bug spray.
Like biting any piece of skin that I'm showing.
Okay.
That's a huge cloud of mosquitoes in the middle of the Alaskan tundra. The ecologist who shot the video says it's the worst summer swarm the locals have ever seen. The area's mosquito population has swelled this summer thanks to heavy rains following unusually heavy snowfall over the winter. See, I told you we can't complain after seeing it. I wouldn't. We're going to recap our top story. Well, the inquest jury examining the death of a young Thunder Bay construction worker released 9 recommendations aimed at preventing similar tragedies in the future. Those decisions came down last night.
And the Canadian Senior Little League Baseball Championships continue at Baseball Central. A game that is now underway features the locals, the Thunder Bay Selects. They're going for their second straight win against Fraser Valley, BC. Matt Scooby will have highlights of that one for you coming up later on.
And we do have a risk of a shower, possible thunder shower overnight tonight, but tomorrow pretty much repeat of what we saw today. But good news, the weekend's looking pretty good for your long weekend plans.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Have a great night.